Good afternoon, everyone. You're absolutely so welcome to the Scotia's annual conference this year in Fermanagh, and we're delighted to be in such a wonderful location as well, in particularly as we celebrate our 20th anniversary. And the conference title reflects that, celebrating 20 years of Scotians, hopes, dreams and possibilities for teacher education. Just before I begin, two announcements for you. We have a photographer and a video team here. If anybody, for any reason, would not like their photograph to be taken or videoed, please would you let Tricia Kelly, our administrator, know, and we'll make sure that that doesn't happen. And the second point is, if you would like to publicise the event or share any ideas with your colleagues, etc., the hashtag is on the programme, and it's Scotans23. So there were the two. So, to introduce myself, I'm Maria Campbell from St Angela's College in Sligo, and I'm the Southern Co-Chair of Scotans. And tomorrow, my colleague, Professor Noel Purdy, will be introducing all the speakers, etc. tomorrow. It's wonderful to see, as I've said, familiar faces and new faces here today. But for those of you who may wonder what is Scotans and what does Scotans do, it was established in 2003 to create a safe space for teacher educators to come together, to talk, discuss, and to explore ways that they could cooperate together. Over the past 20 years, Scotans has grown. The Scotans family has grown extensively, and we now have 34 institutions and organisations, all who have a responsibility for or who have an interest in teacher education. And this includes colleges of education, schools and departments of education in the university sector, teaching councils, various state bodies, curriculum councils, education trade unions, education centres, associations representing principals, and I know when you list things I will forget somebody, and sincere apologies if I have done so on that. We do believe, though, that Scotans is the only network of its kind across a contested border. So what do we do? Well, we have a number of annual events, and this is one of them here. We hold a 2-day conference each year, and in that we invite educational experts, both international, and we have some today, and national, to deliver keynote addresses. We also try and facilitate the sharing of ideas, which will happen in our roundtable session. We host a doctoral school. We had the student-teacher exchange group meeting today. But most importantly, we try and provide a space for you to collaborate and to network with a view to having shared partnerships, collaborations going forward. Our second initiative is our seed funding initiative, and that produces small amounts but of key funding for establishing north-south partnerships. With the view, so Scotans has funded over 140 of these over the last 20 years. And we also host a research webinar every March to support that also. A third annual initiative is our student-teacher exchange. In that we have a face-to-face or an in-person exchange where student teachers from the south travel to Northern Ireland for an assessed placement, and students from Northern Ireland travel to the south for an assessed placement. Over the past 20 years also, just over 250 student teachers have taken part in this. And this year, thanks to additional funding from the Irish-American Partnership, we've extended that to include another institution and 2 more places. More recently, and in response to the COVID-19 restrictions, a virtual student-teacher exchange has taken place. And this is where, again, national and international experts on a chosen theme or field come together to run workshops and sessions for our student teachers. And they are then facilitated afterwards to collaborate in the creation of lesson plans and resources going forward. Alongside these annual initiatives, Scotans also engages in a number of once-off or more shorter-term events and projects. In 2021, we were delighted to partner with the Shared Island Initiative and issued a call for funding. So in response to that, 5 projects were successful, each receiving €25,000. 2 projects completed their research last year, September 22. 1 has just completed it, and we'll be hearing about it tonight, September 23, and 1 will have completed in December 23, and 1 in September 24. So, Scotans, we couldn't operate without the support of our funders, and we would like to sincerely thank the Department of Education Northern Ireland, the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Skills in Dublin, and especially all of you, our member organisations and institutes. Without your help, we wouldn't be here today and we couldn't function. So this year, we are particularly delighted to welcome somebody to open our conference. And again, as I said, we were chatting about that earlier. We can't say enough how delighted we actually are in this particular instance. That the Permanent Secretary, Department of Education, Northern Ireland, Dr. Mark Browne, will open it for us shortly. We'd like to sincerely thank Dr. Browne for this acknowledgement of Scoten's commitment to quality teaching and learning for all in the Ireland. Mark has had a long and a distinguished career in the Northern Ireland Civil Service. And while he began in the Department of Finance and Personnel, Mark moved to the Department of Education, where he worked for 18 years. His remit and his interests led him to work in a variety of areas, where his particular interest in addressing disadvantage was put to great extent. Mark's particular focus on engaging in disadvantage in a meaningful way and on educational disadvantage in particular resonates very strongly with the Scotians community here. So with that, I would like to ask Dr. Mark Browne to come and open our conference for us, and I'd ask you to show your appreciation, please. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maria. It's a pleasure to be here, and good afternoon to all of you. It's always a pleasure to be in a room full of people who are interested in and committed to and engaged in education. And as I came in earlier on, I was impressed with the buzz that there was outside in the room. Clearly, a lot of common issues to talk about, a lot of information and knowledge to share, and important bonds and friendships being made, and hopefully connections for further research. But I'm delighted to be here, particularly on this 20th anniversary of Scoten's. And in this particularly delightful setting in the Fermanagh Lakelands. And I'd like to thank the co-chairs, Gabrielle, who isn't here today, and Noel was standing in for her, and Maria for their very kind invitation. And this is a wonderful event which brings together so many educators, researchers and policymakers from both sides of the border and beyond, reflecting the collaborative nature of our jurisdictions on education matters. And organisations like Scoten's play a key role in supporting the teaching profession through promoting cooperation, collaboration and exchange, all with the commitment of achieving high quality teaching and learning. And that engagement and learning together and the sharing of effective practice through creativity and innovation all contributes to improving the outcomes for our children and young people, which is what this is all about. So the theme for the conference, hopes, dreams and possibilities for teacher education, is very appropriate, particularly as we face some of the most difficult times in education, certainly in the north, and I know you have your own issues in the south, but for us a very challenging financial context. At present, absent an executive, absent ministers, in the midst of the financial pressures, we are desperately trying to limit the long-term damage of the very significant reduction in the department's budget to the education system. Some might say it's a bit rich of the Permanent Secretary to come and talk to a conference of teachers and educators when you haven't given teachers a pay award for the last 3 years. So at the risk of getting political, I'm not going to get political, I can assure you. I just want to make absolutely clear that I fully support the right for teachers to have fair pay and to have an award made. Unfortunately, under the public pay policy that we have, it's not possible for the department to approve an award unless the funding is in the budget, and the funding is not in the budget. But I do hope that highly regrettable and unfortunate position will be resolved in the future, and we will be able to make an appropriate settlement and work with our teachers to get industrial relations back to where we need them to be, because having difficulties in our industrial relations is not helpful for teachers, it's not helpful for the education system, and above all, it's not helpful for children and young people. So we live in hope that those issues will be resolved. So along with the challenges, I believe it's important that we also reflect on the many collective achievements while also looking forward to the future and the opportunities that will present themselves. Across the world, teachers continue to be one of the most important assets in society. In the Northern Ireland context and also in the South, we've long been admired for the standard of our teaching and learning in our classrooms. And that's only made possible through the highly skilled teaching workforce across our system. And the role of teachers simply can't be underestimated, not only in providing an encouraging and safe environment for our children and young people, but shaping them as individuals who will make a contribution to our society and economy in the longer term. Teachers are very much creating the foundations for tomorrow's world, as you all will all know, supporting our children to shape opinions, form ideas, expanding their aspirations, and encouraging their creativity. The impact a teacher can have on a child and young person's life is simply unparalleled. So how we prepare our teachers for the classroom must therefore be similarly unparalleled, and I believe we are fortunate with North and South to have many exemplars of this practice in our higher education institutions. There's much to be celebrated North and South. In both jurisdictions, our pupils do very well in many of the international surveys that there are in terms of both achievement and equality of opportunity. But there's real opportunities for us to develop our relationships further, to learn from each other and to collaborate on a whole range of issues that we share and challenges that we share. In particular, I would like to thank Minister Foley and her ministerial colleagues and officials for their interest in how we might more effectively address educational disadvantage across both jurisdictions. And I welcome very much the ongoing dialogue that we're having between our departments and more broadly in relation to all of this. On my regular visits to schools in Northern Ireland, I'm always impressed by the professionalism and commitment of our teachers who, regardless of the context that they face, regardless of the industrial relations aspect, regardless of the issues I mentioned beforehand on pay, continue on a daily basis to deliver high quality teaching and learning for our young people. We know that whilst a teacher's role can be very rewarding, it's also a very multifaceted and an increasingly demanding one in the world in which we live. And these challenges include supporting both their own and their pupils' well-being and needs, balancing the different learning needs of pupils, improving learning outcomes, all while dealing with what seem to be the ever-increasing administrative tasks, which no doubt they blame myself and the department for, sometimes with justification, and changing technology, to name but a few. And providing our teachers with effective support is therefore of critical importance. And this has to begin with high quality teacher education, because that's where we mould our future teachers, imparting to them the key skills and the knowledge that are needed to succeed in the profession, along, of course, with a lifetime passion for learning. And once they enter the classroom, they then continue to learn and develop professionally alongside the progression of their career, and they require effective teacher professional learning to support this continued development. In the North, our department's strategy for teacher professional learning is called Learning Leaders, and it recognises these challenges in its overall aim. And the overall aim of that strategy is to empower the teaching profession to strengthen its expertise to meet the challenging educational needs of young people in the 21st century. The strategy was published in 2016. It was in many respects ahead of its time. And it recognises that every teacher is a learning leader, accomplished in working collaboratively with all partners in the interest of children and young people. And that's something we must hold on to. Every teacher in every classroom as a leader, leading not only their own learning, but more importantly, the learning of every child in the classroom. In the Department of Education in the North, today, we've actually published our new corporate strategy, and it's entitled Every Child. And it sets out the key priorities for the next 5 years, central to which is our aspiration to have a highly skilled, motivated and highly functioning education workforce, which is provided with adequate support and training to enable it to meet the needs of every learner and stakeholder it serves. And you'll note I talked about educational workforce because we realise that there are teachers and there are other people in the workforce, classroom assistants and others, all of whom contribute to the effective functioning of our schools and the learning of our children and young people. And provision of this support is absolutely central to the success of our teachers in the classroom. And for this reason, we've been working with colleagues in the University's Council for the Education of Teachers with the Northern Ireland Committee on a teacher professional learning framework. This will provide a structured and informed approach to career-long teacher professional learning, combining initial teacher training and early and continuous professional learning into a coherent and streamlined process. So closer collaboration between practitioners and schools, alongside the Education Authority in the North, our other arm's length bodies and our higher education institutions will be a key feature going forward, and something that we've been working on very hard over the last number of years. And we have established what we're terming an end-to-end review of school improvement. End-to-end being starting from the policy in the department through to the delivery through the Education Authority and the other institutions, right into what actually happens in the school and in the classroom, back into the policy. And we're doing that in order to ensure that we have a modern, up-to-date and fit-for-purpose school improvement policy. And I look forward to continuing that journey with many of you in the room and learning and drawing on the learning and cooperation that will come from your exchanges today to help us to deal with the challenges that we will undoubtedly face. Among those, of course, is the hangover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Some parts of society, the view is, well, COVID happened, thank goodness it's over, now let's get on with it. But those of you who work in education will know that there is a long tail of an impact of COVID-19, which is still impacting very, very severely among our children and young people, impacting on things like attendance at school. We are actually having an attendance summit next week, discussing with our key education bodies, just to get a better understanding of what the issues are underlying the very concerning trends in absence, and how we can help to deal with those. So COVID is having a major impact both on our children and young people, on their mental health, on attitudes to school among children and young people, attitudes among parents towards the value of education and the importance of being in school, and an impact on teachers in terms of the pressures that it's bringing to bear. So it really is a significant issue. And it's one, certainly, from a departmental perspective, I have been trying to keep at the forefront to ensure that everyone else doesn't move on and assume education can move on as well. We need the resource and we need the support to deal with what is a very, very significant and ongoing issue. So I know that today you will be dealing with a whole range of issues. I was pleased to see that earlier on this morning the doctoral students were getting together to discuss the work that they're engaged in. We're having an opportunity to share ideas and to network, and that's really, really important because they are the next generation of educators and leaders in the education sector. So it's great to see that. And I note too that the conference will pick up a whole range of issues relating to well-being, which I've just talked about in terms of COVID. Social justice, really, really important in terms of our education system, and both in terms of what we teach in the curriculum, how we teach it, but also in how our system is set up and how it impacts on children and young people in wider society. On critical reflection, on inclusion, again, an area which is really coming into significance for ourselves. I mentioned an end-to-end review of school improvement. We have also launched an end-to-end review of special educational needs, again, right from the policy, which needs to be updated, needs to take account of current thinking on inclusion, and in fact, not just take account of that current thing and start to develop our policies and push us ahead in our thinking about inclusion, thinking through the practicalities of that in schools and in our education system. So updating our policy, but also looking at our current practice and how we support children with special educational needs, and dealing with the increasing numbers that are coming through, which are putting a huge pressure, certainly in the north, and I think it's the same in the south, putting a huge pressure on our education system, and consuming a very significant proportion of what is a constrained budget, and not always resulting in very positive outcomes, or the outcomes that we would wish for those children and young people. It has impacts on special schools in a number of places in there, but it also has impacts on mainstream schools, where increasingly there's increasing numbers moving into mainstream schools, and teachers need to be supported, and principals and boards of governors in those schools need to be supported and need to have the assurances that they will get the support, they will get the training that they need in order to be able to meet the needs of the children that are coming into those schools. That is a huge issue for us, and that's probably the most significant education issue that we have in the North at the moment, and it's one that we are discussing with Southern colleagues, and I'll be very interested to hear about anything that comes out from the proceedings that you have around that can help us in dealing with that. The other thing I would say about the other end-to-end review and school improvement is that a critical part of that is teacher professional learning. That is probably the core of where we're looking to see how can we improve things in that area, because it'll come as no earth-shattering conclusion to yourselves, but it's the quality of our teachers, it's their capacity to engage effectively with children and young people. It's the training and support they get that will make the difference in the education system. Quite often in the department and in other departments, you can spend a lot of your time on the smaller programmes at the margins, the extra programmes, but the real difference comes from where the bulk of our expenditure goes, where the bulk of the education effort comes from, and where the bulk of improvement is going to come from, and that's from the teacher workforce. There's no question in my mind about that, and I think sometimes we need to reorient, I am in the department ensuring that we reorient ourselves back to the notion of the importance of teachers in the school, of empowering and supporting teachers, and that being the engine for improvement and for dealing with the issues that we have. But it requires proper support in terms of funding, and in terms of professional learning, and in terms of all the other ancillary professional services that teachers need now to deal with the issues that come through the door of the classroom day and daily. So that's the challenge that we're facing at the minute. I know you're touching on so many of these over the rest of today and tomorrow, and I really look forward to hearing you say what the outcomes of that are, and I wish you all a very stimulating and rewarding conference. Thank you very much.